And welcome back to Janky AF and Year of the Aerostar, episode number 99. The Wayne Gretzky of Year of the Aerostars, or the Aaron Judge for that matter, I guess. Okay, so it's 99, we're almost to 100. And I want to do something special for 99, even though it's not 100. But they're all special, and that's the point. So don't get too excited for 100, because again, it's just going to be another Aerostar, and that in and of itself makes it special. But we're going to do a good one for that one too. Anywho, Janky do thanky to Chris for bringing this to my attention. I guess we should just go ahead and introduce it. Here we have a 1997 Ford Aerostar passenger XLT extended minivan. Listed in, one second.
Traveling with the sports crowd. Playing the market. Escorting ladies.
Okay, listed, here we go again, listed in Bensonville, Illinois. That was one of the longest trim level introductions we've ever had, so that was kind of fun. That kind of makes it seem special, all the little extra additional things about the Aerostar. Bensonville, Illinois. So we are no longer in Canada, obviously. That was a very fun Canadian residency, but I thought we had to shoot back down to the good old US of A to document this one. And you will see it is a very small image here, but I opened multiple windows to showcase all the things we're going to tell you about, and this is kind of nice because the reveal is nice and small. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Listed for, of course, $14,888, just 54,138 miles on the odometer. And the beauty of this is it's at a dealership, so oftentimes when the car is at a dealership, they'll do more extensive photos and videos. Even we have videos on this one, so a really special one. Let's go ahead and read the description real quick. 1997 Ford Aerostar XLT, original Arizona vehicle, rust-free and only 2 original owners. Clean Carfax, immaculate inside and out, all original paint and factory striping. This is a true gem survivor vehicle that has been garage kept and well maintained. For HD quality videos, please click the links below. So this, I guess, would be the about this vehicle on Marketplace. We do have a VIN number, that's fantastic. We have a Carfax, that's fantastic. The drivetrain, rear-wheel drive, of course, XLT extended minivan, just 54,138 miles. Exterior color beige, interior color tan. I love how they've actually distinguished between beige and tan. You would probably never get that on Facebook Marketplace. A slight difference, but very important nonetheless. Of course, you could also say the exterior color is tan, the interior color is beige, and no one would probably fight you on it, but there you go. Okay, we do have the 4-liter engine, automatic transmission. I don't know. I know that 97, I think the 5-speed automatic transmission was the only option available, and I think it was the first minivan ever to offer a 5-speed automatic. And I believe those were in all 97s. What I don't know is if the 97 came exclusively with the 4-liter V6. I kind of have a hunch that it did, but I'm not positive about that. So if you know, please chime in and let me know. And Janky do thanky in advance, but I seem to think that is how they did things. This is, of course, the last year of the Aerostar, 97, so they kind of pulled out all the stops. Some options were taken away. You no longer had your manual transmission option. I believe that went away in 95. You no longer had your sport option. I believe that went away in 94. Of course, your taillights were simplified, but they also reinforce some things and up the ante a little bit, again, with the 4-liter engine and the 5-speed automatic transmission, which, driving my 93 around, it would be nice to have that extra 5th gear, that sort of overdrive gear. So I would imagine it's a unique driving experience amongst Aerostars. Obviously, just a lot of really amazing things to dig into here. Let's just, step back at first. The condition of the vehicle is amazing. You have these beautiful running boards with little indented grooves for your passenger step up on both your sliding passenger door and your passenger front door. Alloy wheels are standard. That looks amazing, especially with these sort of white lettered BF Goodrich radial tires. This is interesting because I thought this sort of went away towards the end with this color insert on the bumper, but they seem to have either brought it back or maybe it was just always a thing. A very unique trim package here. So we have so much going on. We have this little black strip with chrome inlays on these bumpers, which is unique. We have, I mean, it's basically black and tan, and I love a black and tan. Obviously, we have your rain guards here, not factory, but, you know, very period accurate. We have your roof rack here. Okay, we have a gradient pinstriping here, and maybe we'll get into the photo gallery to see if some of these are a little bit more high resolution. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pinstripe gradient there. Let's not forget about your single pinstripe, which actually does widen out right at the end of this beautiful curve that goes all the way down the vehicle. And then coming down to our wheel arches area, we have another black pinstripe with what looks to be a pink pinstripe. Now maybe this is a faded red from all that Arizona sun, but a very unusual color to throw in there amongst all this black and tan, or black and gold, this like sort of reddish, pinkish pinstripe. I gotta say it works very well, even though it's kind of an unexpected little cue thrown in there. And then down here we get these like sort of gray or almost gold, almost a dark gold set of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 additional pinstripes, also somewhat in a gradient pattern. As you can see, the bottom one is really thick, and up top you just have this tiny little sliver here. So it does look like it kind of thins out, and that all sort of integrates perfectly into your sort of two-tone color, this dark, you know, grayish, goldish secondary color. And it's just, you know, a sight to behold for the eyes. Just a lot going on there. And again, you know, $14,000 plus they're asking for this. If we go back here, $14,888, so almost a $15,000 Aerostar, which I believe, you know, aside from maybe some camper conversions that I've seen listed for that much, is definitely, you know, there was that 86 Aerostar that was like a total cream puff. I had a little higher mileage, 80,000, but it was like super clean, one owner. They were asking 10 or 11 for that, and I believe they lowered the price eventually a little bit. There was a beautiful camper van, Jayco conversion. They were asking $9,800 for this. I believe we had an extended manual transmission with like 19,000 on it, a white one, if you recall that one. That one, I think they were asking 12, but eventually they lowered the price. So $14,888, I think that is the highest Aerostar asking price I've ever seen. I think I saw someone on one of the, because this was on the Aerostar Facebook pages a little bit, someone saying they were sort of crazy for asking this much. You know, it doesn't hurt to ask. Will they get this much for it? I'm not sure, but you know, if you're going to be buying a classic Land Rover or a classic Toyota 4Runner or Land Cruiser, any of those vehicles, any of those really hot SUVs, even like an older 90s Bronco, or even an Explorer for that matter, or if you want to get into an old Isuzu Trooper, a lot of these big like truck SUVs have gotten very, very popular, the real boxy ones from the 80s and 90s. And you know, of course, this is not that. However, and if this was four-wheel drive, it'd be a little bit of a different story. I think then you'd be coming into that price premium because all those vehicles are four-wheel drive, at least most of them. You know, there were two-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive versions of a lot of those vehicles too, but presumably the collectors are going to go for the four-wheel drive ones. Now, whether they will actually ever use them off-road if they're so clean is something to be questioned. I think a lot of people are getting them just because it's a cool beach vehicle, a cool weekend vehicle, and they want something that's like really unique and classic. And those things are, you know, even Jeep Comanches, that's the truck, and then the Wagoneers, the old school Wagoneers, those are going up in value. So for 15 grand, yes, okay, it's a minivan, I get it, but it has all the boxy styling, and it's got this beautifully angled front end that's super retro futuristic. So again, I think if you're hip to the scene and you're a little ahead of the trends, you would see this as a really, really good pickup. I mean, again, if you took this to a Cars and Coffee, you'd be swarmed with people, I guarantee it, because people just they have not yet given the Aerostar its due. Radwood is, of course, huge now, and I still don't see a lot of like Aerostars being featured on Radwood content. And it's just a shame to me. And even though this is, you know, 90s, so almost to 2000s, it's still well within the range. And of course, it's the same body style that goes all the way back to 86, 85 if you count the manufacturing year. So I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, obviously, but I think like do not discount the Ford Aerostar as a rising classic because there's nothing like it, and the styling only keeps aging better. It's got every single thing that you want in sort of an 80s or 90s classic sort of larger vehicle. And while it is not an SUV, I think with the Eddie Bauer trim model, I think it's almost closer in some ways, especially by 97, to an SUV than it is to like a truck or a van, because it was a big people hauler, and yet there was an emphasis on sort of luxury and amenities and technology. And it does have that four-wheel drive. Again, I know this one is not four-wheel drive, but speaking in generalities, it has that four-wheel drive capability or option. So if you want to, even lift it up a little bit and it's a four-wheel drive, you can have that sort of claim to it being like sort of this like utility vehicle, which I think that's the claim of a lot of those vehicles. Now, again, I don't know how many people are actually off-roading in their like pristine vintage Land Cruisers and 4Runners and Land Rovers and things of that nature, Discoveries. A lot of times they're just like sort of show cars, and for instead of being a big box with a big boxy hood, this is a big box with a super angular front end. That's really the only difference. And the fact that it hasn't even come near touching those values of those other vehicles, I think makes it a huge bargain. Of course, again, I'm preaching to the choir, but that's sort of my pitch as to why I think the Aerostar could be headed toward like true classic status. I hope it does one day. And we'll document it right here in the year of the Aerostar. But if this sells for 15 grand or someone buys it for 15 grand, then all it takes is one person. Like with Fiat X19s, another car that I sort of collect and lust after, those have started to tick up. Now, it's only the really nice examples that have started to fetch big money, but you see even like stock examples in like the finest specs starting to creep up near $25,000, $28,000 for, real gems. A well sorted out one still kind of goes for like 8 to 11 grand, but you've seen start of 16, 17 for really nicer ones or unique ones. And you get into some of like the more special ones. I mean, if you got K20 swapped ones, and I'm going on a tangent here, but that's a popular engine swap on those, then they're starting to get 40, 45. But you got to figure there's been like 30 grand of work done to that vehicle. So that kind of justifies it a little bit because that puts your base price still at around 15. Still, those used to go for 4 to 6 to 7 to 8,000. So you have seen almost 100% rise in value. Now, a really nice Aerostar, you can probably get your hands on for like 6 to 8 now. So maybe in 5 years that you could double that, and you could see Aerostars regularly going for $10,000 to $15,000 for really, really nice ones or special ones or unique ones. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. And this would be a prime example. So all it takes is one. If someone were to buy this thing for 15 grand, then all of a sudden, boom, that's like the market on like a pristine low mileage Aerostar. And then it just goes up from there. Again, there has to be demand for it. But it's so crazy to me. Like, and I know this will eventually happen. This is kind of happening with toilets too, which is my other little venture. You're starting to see them pop up all over Instagram, mock-ups of like Air Jordan toilets and all this stuff. And I don't know why the toilet manufacturers have not jumped on this and started making like designer toilets, but it's happening. It's coming, I guarantee you. And I think, the same thing could happen to some of these sort of underappreciated classic cars. We shall see. Let's get into some of the pictures here because we have a beautiful photo gallery, and we'll highlight some of the unique things about this particular Aerostar. I mean, look at the chrome, look at the bright work on this, look at how good that is, look at how nice the paint is. You just don't see that every day in an Aerostar, and especially with all these graphics, if you were to like have to redo this paint, like that's going to be very, very expensive, probably as much as the vehicle costs to make one this pristine. No like even scratches or stains or little nicks on your bumper. I mean, the fact that this car has lasted this long and has been this pristinely kept. And 50,000 miles, obviously very low, but that's still a lot of miles to drive and keep a car so clean in any condition. So that is impressive. I want to show one thing. I'm going to skip around here a little bit as we come around now. I love the front face of the Aerostar, obviously. And what's cool is the Aerostar looks very, very different depending on what sort of depth of field you're taking your photograph of it with. So this shot, like, okay, you know, looks like an Aerostar, but when you go down to this shot and you go down lower, you realize it looks like a totally different vehicle, and you realize just how low, and you can kind of see it more in this picture, but you realize how low in the grand scheme of things the headlights are. For being like a pretty tall car, the headlights are extremely low. And that's something about it that you don't really see until you really start to study it and look at it in person and look at the proportions. And I don't know, it just, you know, you think about vans and SUVs now, a lot of times the hood line or the roof line is so high, so to be able to get in the engine bay to work on it, or just, you know, there's a big thing now about, honestly, a lot of pedestrians getting hit by these gargantuan vehicles, and it's like a safety hazard, and they're just, you know, you go up to a modern like Suburban, they're just like, you know, it's like, I'm an average person, about 5'11", and you know, it's like it's up to here. You know, it's just so high for like the hood line to be at. And the Aerostar, it's like really low because it was a vehicle manufactured in the 80s and 90s. But then you realize how much space is in it. Like I think that in an extended Aerostar, I'm willing to bet you could fit just as much stuff as you could fit in like an $80,000 2023 Chevy Suburban, like actually just cargo area. I think you could fit probably just as much, because a lot of these modern SUVs, they're even though they look boxy, they still have curves to them. So your clearances on your sides just aren't quite like an actual box. So that limits a lot of like the height of something, a parcel you can put in there. Ooh, look at this great wide angle shot. And this is a fantastic, yeah, it really does look like a pink or almost like fuchsia pinstripe. It looks really out of place, but then you kind of just go with it and it kind of works. Really, really beautiful. And the black and tan motif on this is just like, I'm just eating that up. Like, I think it's such a great combination. And just like this is funny. So the Aerostar was never made with a sliding passenger door, and it has a gas tank in there. So honestly, it probably would have been pretty hard to like re-engineer. And even the Windstar, I believe, I just read this, the first generation Windstar, which only ran for a couple of years, didn't have a passenger sliding door too, because Ford did a lot of consumer research and decided that it wasn't that important to people. Now we always associate minivans with having two sliding doors, but this still harkens back to a time where you only had one. And quite honestly, it's not that hard to climb in and, you know, go to wherever you want in the vehicle. But the funny thing that jumps out at you is there's no scallop or like little indent here for someone to climb in. So what's funny about that is it lends an asymmetry to the vehicle. And I always love asymmetry in vehicles, where you have two over here, but then you only have one over here. So that's just like sort of a cool little detail. Ironic that we're speaking of symmetry, because, and that's a beautiful profile shot. I may use that for the thumbnail. Okay. I was watching the video of this, and maybe we'll get to that in a second, but I saw they were doing a little, you know, walk around of the rear end, and I noticed this, and for some of you real Aerostar buffs, this will pop out immediately. One, it's got a stainless steel exhaust, which is really cool. The other thing though is the Aerostar exhaust was usually always on the passenger side. So I was like, wow, did they reroute the exhaust to the driver's side? And then I kept watching the walk around, and they kept walking around the vehicle. Excellent shot of the back, by the way. We'll get to that in a second. Boom. Another exhaust tip on the passenger side, where it usually would be located. So I would love to see, I haven't even looked at all these yet. Maybe they have some on a lift. This appears to have a dual exhaust, which, aside from the side exhaust that we saw in that one cargo edition Aerostar a while back, if you perhaps remember, technically that was a dual exhaust because they had a side exhaust coming on both sides, and this is of course a semi-side exhaust, which I joke about. But this Aerostar must have had some sort of custom muffler job, because it has a dual exhaust, which is really cool. I mean, I bet this Aero, especially with the 4-liter, I bet it sounds great. I bet it has a nice burble to it, and visually it just looks great, especially with stainless steel tips here. I mean, you know, talk about all the bells and whistles. Okay, we go back to this shot. This is of course the XLT, the higher trim package. And what I love about the rear of the Aerostar is all your pinstriping continues on through the rear, but it just simplifies a little bit. But you do get a really nice shot at this. We'll call it raspberry, this little raspberry stripe that runs through the entire length of the back. It sort of just, it looks different on the rear hatch because there's not as much going on. You get just like a a more clear image of what exactly you're working with in terms of pinstripes. I read something recently also that this license plate holder was made wide specifically so it could fit European plates on it, which means that, and I think the article or whatever I was reading said this, that there was some limited export of areas in Europe, you know, from the factory. So I do believe these were sold from the factory to European locations. Now, I'm not sure in what capacity or in what context how that was done, but it would make sense that you have a wider rear thing here. I always noticed that it was so much wider. So I'll have to dig a little bit into more what the actual terms were, what the situation was, and where it was actually sold from the factory in Europe and other locations. But that sort of is a little clue there, and it makes sense. Of course, your 97 simplistic taillights here with no amber and just the white and the red. It has grown on me. I mean, I like it just for the fact that it's unique. I like the look of the amber personally, but it does offer something. And of course, it's always just a cool telltale sign. I read also that apparently people like to, and I guess we have proof of that because we had that blue Aerostar that had the 97 taillights put in it. And I think to do these, you actually have to drill an extra hole into the body somewhere. So it does require a little bit of fabrication, shall we say, customization to get that in there. But just a little aside for you, if you are thinking about swapping a 97 taillight onto your non-97 Aerostar. Another fantastic profile shot here with the door. I mean, you know, and tan is a fairly common color for the Aerostar and a fairly pedestrian color, but you almost, and this is more of a gold, I will say, but it almost looks, it's like gold is one of my favorite car colors. My Fiat X19 is in gold. There's a gold Ferrari 328 or 308 up on Bring a Trailer right now, and they're saying how it's like a huge price premium. So gold Ferraris I've always liked. I think gold is just a really underrated color, especially for sports cars. And I think it's just an underrated color generally. Now in the 90s, you had a lot of these gold, Chrysler Town and Country came in gold, and a lot of Chrysler products generally, and a lot of Ford products. You see a million gold or tan Mercury Sables and things like that. But I think it's still underrated because when you see it on something that you don't expect it to be on, suddenly it looks like really special. And then you can kind of translate that back to looking at it on a quote unquote more normal civilian car. And in the Aerostar, which I always compare to a sports car, of course, I think gold is a fantastic color on it. And I think once it's all gussied up with all these pinstripes and everything like that, it really looks the part of a special vehicle. It doesn't look like just a run-of-the-mill color. It really looks like something bold and striking and predominant. And so I think it works well here. And I think this would be a real gem in any collection, no matter what that collection is. I love people who have eclectic collections. I like people who sort of just want to pick and choose random stuff to put in their collections. And I think this would really work well. It's still at that point now where it's such a novel vehicle to consider a classic for most people that if you go ahead and buy up an Aerostar, it's going to turn some heads and it's going to get people to reconsider their general conception of what an Aerostar is. That's the funny thing about trends. That's the funny thing about what's popular. That's the funny thing about what commands a greater price in the classic market, is it's all based on people doing something novel, and all of a sudden something shoots off and becomes really, really popular that wasn't before. It happened with Ferrari F50s for a long time. Those were like sort of the forgotten Ferrari supercar, and they could be had like cheaper than F40s, even though there are many fewer of them made. And I always liked the F50 because it was in Need for Speed 2, SE. And then all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, Countach is the same way. I mean, even Countachs, which were always cool, of course, but didn't really have these crazy values on them. And then all of a sudden, now they're soon to be $1 million car. Nice examples are already, easily over 500,000. And of course, with a car like that, the Aerostar will never get there just because there were so many of them made. However, if you're in the game of like sort of trendiness speculation, there's no more slept on vehicle than the Ford Aerostar. I mean, you know, none of the major YouTubers have touched the Aerostar. Like, think about it. Like, there's no reviews of it on any of these major channels. No one's bought in one. I mean, Tyler Hoover has bought like every single car made in the last 20 years, and he hasn't bought a Ford Aerostar. And someday he will, and then it will take over, and, you know, here at Janky AF will be this, like, you know, little whatever forgotten thing. But that's not a self-pitying statement. It's just, there's always like sort of a bittersweet thing when you're sort of really into something and then it becomes mainstream, and it's a very egotistical emotion, because ultimately you want everybody to enjoy this thing as much as you enjoy it. So I'm like waiting for it to blow up, and at the same time, you know, when it does, there'll be like just a little tiny tinge of sadness, because you feel like you were kind of in on something special before it took off. And that's why all of you here watching Janky AF are in that very unique group with me. So Janky do Thanky. All right, enough, you know, like sort of egotistical self-pitying for one day, right? Go buy a Ford Aerostar, Tyler Hoover, and, you know, shock the world. Here we go. We'll get some more looks at just how pristine this paintwork and stuff is. You know, it's episode 99, so I can't help but, you know, realize we're counting down to 100, and so that makes me want to zoom out a little bit and talk about the Aerostar more generally. But let's focus on some of the details. Here we are on the interior. Of course, one of the first things that jumped out with me, center console. That's awesome. What I like is that it's the black and tan interior, obviously, but I kind of like that it doesn't have the piping on these seats. You would expect this to have some sort of gold piping on it. It's too bad they didn't do a black piping, because that would have looked really amazing on these. But there's a lot of times there's this little piping that sort of runs along the stitch lines wherever these two dissimilar fabrics meet. And I gotta say, I really like it without the piping, even though a red piping would have worked really well, because it would have sort of complemented that like pink purplish stripe on the outside. It kind of would have had a continuity there. But I think it's cool because it just shows off, A, how much tan and gold and beige is going on here, but it shows off these two, like I said, dissimilar fabrics. So these are like great two-tone seats, all the same color, but slightly different, variation on a theme, which is one of my favorite sort of design cues. And you see the beautiful tan and gold steering wheel. The other thing I'll say is you see a lot of gray interiors, like my 93 Sport, you see a lot of gray interiors that do have this, you know, non-pinstriped or non-piping seat. So you see the all grays quite a bit. It's more rare to see the all golds with no sort of like accent or anything going on with them. So that's like a novelty right there in and of itself. Got a little bug coming into Jankytown Studios here. Again, door jambs, all this stuff. You can just see how clean it is. And the seat is not torn. You know, there might be a little bit of wear from, you know, butts getting in and out of it, but again, it was driven 54,000 miles. Like it's not like it came off the showroom. Although I do like how they put these wonderful plastic mats on it there to make you feel like you're buying a new car. Another great thing is they took the same insert they have in the seats and put it on the door card in some of these Aerostars, not all of them, and it's always funny to think about how and when that got optioned out, which package it was on, etc. I also like your air vents in the gold Aerostar interiors in particular. It just, I don't know, something about the gold plastic air vents. Like, you would think that a lot of times they would just make these black. Like, it's actually funny. This may be the first time I noticed this, how one is black and one is gold. But you would think they would just slap a black vent in there and not bother with tinting it the color of the rest of the vehicle, because honestly it would work as black. But the fact that they actually manufactured and painted one or molded one, whatever they did, to be gold and then the other one to be black, that's very cool. And that's sort of another little cool asymmetry about the Aerostar. Little details like those that really, I don't know, just make it for me. Like somewhere along the line, someone had to make a decision on what to do about that. And there were so many of those little things with the Aerostar. Again, like the power locks and windows that were sort of like color coded. Like, I've never seen that in another car. It was just really, really cool. push button lights, which is awesome. Right here, you get the great push knob or pull knob light. I love that. It's just such a carryover from old timey vehicles. And it's just so, you know, tactile things. We all love tactile things in our classic cars, and it's so satisfying to just like pull out that knob and see the lights come on. It's just a really cool thing. So I like that you have your center console and your factory cup holders here. Again, these cup holders, not very useful. So it's nice to have that center console, which we get a little glimpse of there with your great change holder, a little push in the change, and it goes into that little slot. Of course, the Aerostar always had the floor mounted emergency brake, which is really cool. Another shot of these doors. As you can see, both the locks and the windows, the red over blue two-tone, I guess. And I always wondered about this. I guess blue would mean to go down, which would mean letting air in, and red is going up, which would mean, I guess, keeping heat in. You know, I get that they're color-coded, but I will say even I had to be like, well, what does the color mean? But that seems to make sense. And I just like that they're two different colors, a little splash of color in the Aerostar. Again, just little switches, you know, but I feel like that's the great fun about driving older cars is just to see how they did everything and see how, and especially with so many touchpads now, to see the care that went into these little details is very, very satisfying. See it on the other side, and of course only one lock here, because on the driver's side door you could, so lock is blue, unlock is red. Maybe down is, yeah, down is red and up is blue. You would almost think that unlock would be blue and lock would be red, but again, they're color coded. How much that visual message is actually translated, I don't know, because obviously I, don't like immediately think, oh, boom, that makes sense, but it doesn't matter. The fact is that they're color coded, and that's very cool. You can see, in addition to the fabric here from your inside section of your seats, you have another different fabric here. So many different fabrics going on, because this is not even the fabric that's on the outside of the seats. And we have this, again, extra little, and they even lined them with this nice leather stitched lining. Like, again, this is a very luxury item. Like, some Ferraris interiors are not this nice. And the fact that they just put this in like a minivan adds this like sort of air of luxury and sophistication to it that I absolutely love. The seats, again, fantastic. You know, there's so many, and I get that maybe like a Chevy Astro, maybe the four-wheel drive system's a little bit more robust, or like in theory they're a little easier to work on. I don't know what the advantage is really of the Astro. People just seem to think they're better. But I think anything the Aerostar is lacking against the Astro in like sort of being truck-like or whatever, I think it more than makes up for in sort of the amenities of it and the design of it and the looks of it and the features of it. So, I mean, obviously, again, I'm biased, but here you have all your center controls here, so you could listen to headphones separate from the drivers, which, again, really ahead of its time. Really great feature if you're on, like a road trip or something like that. Just keep the kids quiet. Here you have your third row bench seat. I haven't even talked about this. Captain's chairs. Now, the Eddie Bauer editions had the fold down bed, which they offered, although I think on the Eddie Bauers you could still also get the captain's chairs. This does have the captain's chairs. Really cool, I think. I mean, I like captain's chairs, and again, that makes it a little bit more like an SUV instead of like a minivan with just two benches in it. So, comparing this to older classic SUVs, you have these captain's chairs. So, if you just have four people going around, you could take the rear bench out, and it's super practical, super comfortable, and you have all that space back there to put in whatever you want. I love this picture, and I've said this about other Aerostars recently, because this is an extended Aerostar. So there's already, in this case, 7 people sitting here, and look at how much room you have after 7 people. A lot of these modern 3-row SUVs, the rear bench seat, the third row that they always brag about, it's so far tucked back there. It's really cramped. There's not a lot of foot room, and there's almost nothing behind it in a 3-row SUV. This is 20 years before, and there's so much more room, and the room for the passengers is better. And, you know, again, the way they got so much room into this vehicle at this size is absolutely, it's like the best use of space of a vehicle. And you still have these little extra compartments back here. You have these little hatches back here, which you can fit even more stuff in. You can fit luggage for 7 people behind that compartment. And I think in a lot of big, you know, full-size 3-row SUVs, they're not nearly as roomy or as spacious in terms of cargo as the Aerostar was, again, 20, 30 years before it. You have your vents for your passengers, which is very nice. Your, you know, ventilation system is going into the rear seats, a very nice feature. Your headliner looks immaculate, and these headliners did not hold up that great, so that's saying something. Okay, you have your great Aerostar. I believe the audio system, these buttons are a little bit different on the 97 too than on previous models, and your graphic equalizer has gone away, which is kind of a shame, honestly. But it's still like a nice old school Ford logo. I love when they put their logo on the sound system. Cassette player, AM, FM radio, I would imagine. Very nice. All your temperature gauges, and just this is the luxury of having an Aerostar at a dealership too. We get to see nice up close pictures of all these things. Again, I call this the little beaker dial, like it's a little beaker and it just points with a little light at wherever you're at, so it's very easy to know where you're at. It's amazing how they can make some gauges so confusing, so you don't know where the pointer is, where it's at. Lots of different buttons and combinations of buttons. Everything was so much simpler and clear. Like you have, you know, where you want the air going, what temperature you want that air going at, and where you want it going to, and at what speed. So, you know, boom, 4 little controls like there. That's your whole HVAC system. That's all you need. Again, I've lauded the steering wheel many times. You have your cruise control on off, very simple. Set, accelerate, resume, and then they have coast, which is interesting, which I guess means I actually don't know what that means. Is it like freewheeling? Is it like, because you would think you just turn it off, but maybe coast, you can like cancel the cruise control without turning it off, like temporarily coast without the cruise control, but then not have to turn it back on. That's very interesting. I'm an idiot, so please tell me in the comments if it's very simple and I'm just not getting it. Your lovely little horn buttons. I love those, and I love that they're on both sides of the wheel. A nice feature. Again, have your color-coded buttons. Another shot of your center console with tape holder, your big long emergency brake. I mean, your alloy wheels. We can go on and on, and there are videos of this too. There's another shot of the roof. We don't get to often see this shot of the roof, and believe me, like every Aerostar I've ever seen has like some sort of degradation going on the roof. So this in itself is super, super rare to see a roof that has no rusting or paint peeling away or, you know, other things like that. I gotta say, glove box in the Aerostar may be kind of a weak point for how big and spacious and, you know, a vehicle is. The glove box was always like kind of small and you can't fit that much stuff, and the latch like kind of also eats up some of that space. So, you know, listen, I can be objective about the Aerostar. It has its weak points. Again, there you go, obligatory odometer shot even on a fancy dealership website listing. There you go. That's all your information there. Okay, another little look at the engine bay. Look at how clean that is. And there you see I'm starting to recognize the differences between the 4-liter and the 3-liter. You just see a little bit less of the block in the 4-liter. And this sort of airbox situation, I wonder if that's standard too, actually, or that was like a different box put on. All looks incredibly clean. All looks incredibly rust-free, and you know, ready to rumble. Okay, here we do have some nice undershots now. Will we get to see the muffler situation here? There is. So there's the gas tank. I think that's the muffler, but I don't see it splitting up anywhere there. I wonder if we'll get to see anything else. I would love to see some shots of that exhaust situation. Again, everything incredibly clean under here. All your like hoses and everything. I don't want to bore all of you as I'm looking at a lot of these pictures for the first time, but it might be nice to, there you go. I think those are mufflers, right? Coming out there. It's like we have the dual tips coming out there. Really, really cool. So I've never seen like look at how clean everything is. Aerostar is interesting because it's like, it is a unibody, but it's kind of like a body on frame too. It's like a body on unibody. From what I've read, the Ford engineers that were doing trucks weren't super familiar with unibody construction, so they kind of wanted to have sort of like a body on frame, but they wanted to do a unibody. The VIN number is VN on Aerostars, and it was a unique platform that was only another way in which the Aerostar is sort of singular is that was the only vehicle that was on that platform, which if you think about it now is crazy because Chrysler put like 30 different vehicles on their K platform, you know? So the fact that Ford, engineered, this van from the bottom up on its own entire platform would probably like never be done again unless you're talking about like a halo car. But again, I guess the Aerostar is a halo car. A little bit of rust here going on. We caught a little bit of rust and I wonder if that, comes out in the exhaust note. But certainly a very cool, again, dual exhaust situation going on. And with your chrome tips there. There you see it hanging. Okay, we got some good underbody shots of the muffler, so that's fun. I'm actually gonna, these are really funny. These on my 93, it's the same thing. Like this looks like no offense, but this looks like a 12-year-old did this in shop class. Like they just got a piece of ankle iron and everything is so, then these are what hang the running boards. And you can tell it's such like an afterthought where they're just like, all right, you could go to like the hardware store and even have them cut it for you. Just a piece of angle iron, bolts, and then you bolt it with like sort of another piece of L bracket to, whatever chassis components in two places. And then it just holds up the running board. Like it's so funny to me how basic this is. But I love it because, A, it works, and B, like, it doesn't need to be fancy. Why make it fancy at extra cost and then just have to sell the thing for more money? Like this solution is what makes this vehicle affordable. And I love the way it looks because it looks super basic and janky. So just a little love letter to the angle iron that's holding up the running boards. These look much better than the ones on my 93 Sport, I will say that. And those are in need of some loving. Okay, I'm gonna do something I don't usually do, but I'm gonna sort of not look through all the photos. We're used to seeing like, sometimes we've done Aerostar videos only one photo and have to like really glean out as much as we can. This is a rare instance where we have actually more than we can even handle. But we will do a walk around here. Hopefully this picks some of the audio on the mic. And this is where I first noticed this like sort of dual tip situation. As you can see, one coming around there. And as we go around the back. I like how they have this little like hospital bed sheet set up for their their photos. Really appreciate that. And of course the other one there, that's where I first noticed that. That classic Ford beep. And we're here at revving. This thing loves to beep, even when the door is not ajar. Sometimes, or even when the key's not even in there, it still beeps at you. Okay, we'll get a little look at this 4-liter engine there running. I encourage you to go, if you're really into Aerostars, I encourage you to go check this out and actually look at all the pictures for yourself. And who knows, maybe make an offer. I kind of doubt they're going to sell this thing for 15 grand. So, but maybe if you made them like a really nice offer, you can drive away with it. We have a loan calculator right here. Let's see, you make a $2,000 down payment and term, I don't even know what that is. Oh, it's a 3-year note. You can't get a car for anything less than 5.5% these days. Let's say 7%. I'll calculate a payment here. This is probably all behind my head. All right, that doesn't make any sense. Well, you can figure out your own payment situation. So there you go. I could say so much more about this car, but I mean, a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's just an incredibly clean time capsule. I like that it's last year, that it's extended, that it has the graphics package. It's got a great color combination. It's got the 4-liter engine. It's got the dual exhaust. It's got super low mileage. I mean, it has so many different things going for it. This would be an immaculate Aerostar to add to any collection. and also infinitely usable. You know, if you want to go to Home Depot or you got to bring Billy and all his friends somewhere, or little Susie, so you could use it. I would be afraid to because it's so darn nice, and anything I touch turns janky. So I would like be afraid to even own this thing. It's so nice. But if I have the Aerostar museum that I want one day, perhaps this would fit in quite nicely. And you just take it out once a year, you know, or a little more than once a year, you know, keep the fluids going and everything. You got to drive them, but you would, you know, give it the white glove treatment. So there you have it, episode 99. We just hit 600 subscribers, which I was wondering what we were going to hit first, 100 episodes or 600 subscribers. Now, in 2 or 3 days' time, that may be back down to 599 because I tend to gain subscribers and then lose a few who probably subscribed several years ago, and then we're like, well, this guy's talking about Aerostars now, I'm out. That's cool. We do other content, but the bulk of our content right now is Year of the Aerostar, and we're marching towards 100 episodes. Thank you so much. I love hitting that threshold. I will actually be traveling soon, but I'm going to try to pre-record a bunch of stuff and do some celebratory stuff for 600 episodes and 100 episodes, 600 subscribers and 100 episodes. A little house cleaning here, if you don't mind. So I'm super appreciative, and I think this is a great way to do 99. I think like it's a great celebration of like what the peak of the Aerostar is in today's day and age. 100, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be something a little different, but I hope you'll appreciate that episode as well. Can't wait to get that out. I'm going to probably shoot that very soon. And what more can I say? Thank you for watching here on Janky AF, Year of the Aerostar. We will have another one for you very soon. And until then, Janky do thanky.
One small step for man, one